Hi, I'm Dan. This is Geekery Labs. Here's an update on my Star Wars Haslab Razor Crest modification project. Well, I'm not done with the MLC 3 build at this moment. I decided that it'd be better, a better draw for a starting YouTube channel to do something with a little bit more of a little flash to it. And, well, let's say we're all beholden to the algorithm. So I'm working on the Razor Crest. So this is going to be my main focus for a little while. I'll probably still be working on some of the tank build in the background. And I'll make notes of and record bits as I progress on that. I got the circuitry in for it, for the boards that'll control it. I'm going to have to research on exactly what I need to do for programming those. Anyway, so that'll be a bit of a delay. But for this, I'm focusing in on the engines. So I will have a card in the upper corner of the screen pointing to the Star Wars MLC 3 build, for if anybody is curious about that. That's a scratch build mini tank from Empire Strikes Back that I'm rebuilding in 1/12 scale for a Black Series action figure. But this is the Haslab Razor Crest that I am completely redoing as a 1/32nd scale model, because the outside of the ship is 1/32nd scale, even though the figure that came with it is 1/18th, and the interior is 1/18th. So I'm going to be rebuilding the whole inside and repainting everything and adding electronics to make it into just a large-scale model kit of the ship, as accurate as I can make it. Right now I'm focusing on the engines and their lighting. I'm going to be using a pair of Adafruit Neopixel Jewels. These guys right here. These are RGBW, with the white part of the LEDs being a cool white, so it'll give a nice bright white in there for the engine acceleration. The only other lights that appear on the engines themselves is that little indicator underneath, and that's just kind of a low amber glow, so I'll be able to just put a very simple LED on the other side of that. That will be easy to light up because it's just a clear amber piece that you can make out right there. Just put a little LED on the other side of that and that'll glow. The engines, as I did in my previous video, are notoriously difficult to take apart. You can see all the scratching that I had to do on the frame just to get these things off. You know, fortunately this is all covered up again by the engine parts. But right now I'm figuring out, you know, how to mount the LEDs in here. So I've got my jewel. That fits really nicely right there in the center of that. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and take that out of the bag. Alright, so kind of the LED will be centered there, and then that goes directly on there like that. So what I need to do is, see, this won't actually fit down in there over the LED because it has this interior piece that comes down a little bit too far. It's like directly over the plastic plug here. So I need to cut out the top of this. In fact, I might even just cut off the whole top part that snaps onto this ring. And that way it'll lift off much easier. Alright, so what I'm going to do is take off this top piece here that has the lip that grips onto this ring. what I intend to do is to drill through these holes where the screws go in to mark the points in there, and I'm going to put some rare earth magnets on the other side, so that way the screws that hold the whole engine shroud together will be able to just clip on there with the magnets, and that'll hold that on securely, but I'll be able to remove it again easily for repairs. So we got that ring there. This piece fits over that, and then we've got this ring fits over the top of all of this. And then the nozzle will be on top. And all of this screws together into one unit that comes off the back. So whenever the LEDs will be just on the other side of this. Now this piece here is also going to be modified some. I'm going to drill out the center of it, and then it also needs to be painted, because I will include a still shot of what the engine looks like on the show versus what this looks like. So you can see right here that there's actually a lot of metal pieces that are blocking the light on the inside where this orange piece is. So I'm going to paint this and put some good light blocking on it, so that way it's appropriate. So you might have noticed over here in the corner, this is a little 1/32 scale Mando that I 3D printed and painted up. So he's going to be my scale guide. So this may not be the one that I actually display with the ship itself. You know, I may even do up a few different ones in different poses. Maybe have one that I can put in the cockpit when I want, when they put in the cargo hold when I want. I don't know. But this is just one that I found online that, you know, worked well, and so I printed him up at 1/32 scale. I actually looked up Pedro Pascal's height and then added in the boots and the helmet and scaled it appropriately, so this is appropriate for the height of the character. And then something else that I printed up for very basic scale reference is a couple of figures here that I had gotten online that I was able to, you know, the 3D model of this, you're able to move each component just at the ball joint at each section here. So I was able to make one that's just standing up, and then one that I molded into attached to a seat, so he'll be the cockpit scale model, and that way I'll be able to make sure that everything fits as appropriate. So I can, these are also the same height as Pedro Pascal in the armor, so that way I can do up the cockpit correctly, and then with the standing one I can make sure that all the heights in the rooms are good, as well as like the length of the bed, to make sure he would be able to fit in there. So I can try and make this as good of a scale model as I can. So first off, I'm going to use a little drill here. I think that'll work just fine. These drill bits with the little hex on the back here are great for this kind of simple plastic type project. I got this whole set at Harbor Freight, and if you fit that into an electric screwdriver, then the drill bit doesn't spin fast enough to melt the plastic. So using a regular electric drill will sometimes do that, where it just goes too quickly. And for this particular purpose, I'm not even needing to go all the way through. I'm more or less just scoring the plastic on the other side but if it goes all the way through, it's okay. But I'm going to be mounting magnets in these spots, so that way I know that there. That way I know I'll have the screw locations correct. But yeah, that's a nice little trick. These hex head drill bits in a screwdriver. I just keep them in this little case here. I have a couple hundred of these. This is actually a case for a tape drive. My job that I work at used to be in a server room environment, and they were throwing away just tons of these things. So I grabbed a whole bunch of them, and I used them for various supplies. So if you can get hold of things like this, it's super useful. I've got some shelves over here next to me that these fit onto just perfectly. And I just put a little piece of tape at the top to grip it and be able to pull it out easily. There's just a little piece of tape there, a little flap. And I just use that to pull at the top, and I can pull it off the shelf and get to it. You know, other things I'm doing with it, I've got one of these full of rubber bands. I've got another one full of paper clips. I've got various Dremel wheels in these. I've got all sorts of things that are in these little containers. They're super useful for small project stuff, as well as parts and tools. So, okay. So my next step is going to be just to pop this off after I get a appropriate tool to wedge in there, and then pop this past the mushroom peg here. And then I can cut that off, and then I can start using some styrene and other pieces to make an appropriate base to support the LEDs. So what I would like to do is actually have the Neopixels inset just a little bit, so that way they're a little bit further back from the engines themselves. There's two holes in there for standoffs, so I'm going to have something that'll support this, so that way there's some air behind it, because LEDs can get hot. These won't be running long enough to really be much of an issue, and I won't have them at full brightness really, so this is just going to be for some nice color mixing in the engines themselves. So whenever I come back, I will show what progress I have made. It's as if a billion mint-in-box collectors suddenly cried out in agony, or suddenly silenced. That madman! He took a Dremel to the Haslab Razor Crest! The humanity! Yep, this project is what I had in mind from the beginning when I paid for it. Whenever I saw the information from Hasbro about what this was going to be, this exact project is what I had in mind. Because, you know, none of their large ships are actually to scale with the figures. They can't be. An actual 1/18th scale Razor Crest would be like 6 feet long. It would be huge. And this thing's already massive. So you know, that would just be completely impractical. It would be a couple of $1,000s. This is the scale considerations for making the figure work is just a reality for the Hasbro designers. You know, that's just something they have to do. It's not anything that I fault them for. It's just how it works. Ever since the very beginning. The, you know, X-Wings and TIE Fighters, Millennium Falcon, those have all been way underscaled to make them practical to sell. You know, even then, the Falcon was a big ship. You know, they all felt big. But the D'Agostini 1/18th scale X-Wing is just massive. And that actually is action figure scale. So you can have that with your high-end 3 3/4 inch figures, and it looks just right. But the wingspan is like, you know, 2.5, 3 feet across. But I wanted to have my Razor Crest to basically be a high-end, detailed, accurate scale model, which requires the need to remove everything on the inside. See, and that gives me these nice little cap pieces here that I can use for other things, either separately or together, since they actually still have this lip here that notches them just right. So now I have that opening. This piece will fit on there nice and snug. It doesn't lock on there anymore, obviously, but that's what the magnets will be for. I've got the little holes that I drilled out in order to mark the positions to make them. I've got lots of these little magnets that will stick to the screws that hold the engine parts together. So now I've got both of those drilled out, and that lowers down the surface to where I can work on a mounting for the LED chip to go on there. It's more of a card or a board, because, you know, that is a circuit board. It's just not square like you're used to seeing for a card or board. But I need to then solder in some wires, make another hole on the inside here, because this surface here has no holes in it. So I'll just make a little hole there for the wires to pass through. And, I mean, I could put, you know, circuit boards and anything else I need to on the inside of this. This is just massive. The engine parts I have over there by my painting booth, because I had primed them. So those are all able to now be repainted and detailed up. Probably add some wires in there and some bits of guitar string for cabling and stuff like that. There. All right. So now that everybody's been properly traumatized by watching a madman take a Dremel to a Haslab Razor Crest, I will pause this here and pick it up a little later on. Okay, so I've got some magnets attached Right now, they're just super glued on. I'm not expecting these to be the long-term solution. What I need to find out is the distance between this surface and the screws that hold this together. So once the glue is set, then I'll be able to take the thruster, fit it on there, and then be able to tell if it stays or not. I can either, put a larger magnet that is up a little higher, or I can even drill a hole that fits the magnet, because, I don't know if this actually sits flush with the plastic here. If it does, then I can simply drill a hole the size of the magnet and then just inset it so that way it stays flush. So I'll just have to find out what is going to wind up working. This is kind of the first test to see, which way I'm going to have to go with it. So once that super glue sets, then I'll be able to find that out. I just used some thick CA glue from my local hobby shop. The top notoriously got gummed up really bad, so what I did is I put a paper clip in there in order to be able to, keep that from getting filled up with glue, but it literally just sealed the paper clip to it. So the way I use it now is unscrew the top, and now I have a little paperclip applicator at the end, so I can do precision, or like I did in this, I just used a coffee stirrer and dip it into the bottle. This is the lid from a convenience store drink cup. They make great little trays for things like super glue. Because whenever it gets gummed up on there, they're flexible. So you can just bend it, crack off the glue, throw that away, and you still have the lid. So having a few of those on hand, and they come in different sizes, and you can just get yourself a drink, and the cup might be useful for something later too if you want, but hold on to the lid, and they're good for a long time. Eventually the plastic will crack from the flexing, but it's virtually free, so I'm not advocating going and just grabbing a bunch of lids from your convenience store, but just get a fountain drink of some sort and you get yourself a lid. So that's what I've got going on right now, and I've just got to wait for this to set. I'm not going to bother using the kicker. I don't use kicker all that often for my CA glue because it just feels like that acceleration of the curing of it. It just to me it seems likely that it should make it more brittle. I don't know if that's correct or not. That's just what it feels like, is that it might be a less strong bond than if it just air cured. So I don't know if I'm right or not. Probably not, but later on, whenever I do come up with the actual proper height for the magnets, I've got some other stuff that I'm going to be using to permanently affix that into place where they're not going to move like ever. So those will be a permanent fixture, and I'll make it nice and easy. There are no lights in the front of the engine. That's just an air intake. So I'm not going to bother putting lights up front, just the ones in the back, and then that little indicator light underneath, and that's it for the engines. They're super simple. The lighting of the Razor Crest really isn't all that detailed. The cockpit's probably going to have the most variety to it, but even in most cases there, it's usually just kind of solid lights in different colors. So I can always just use some different colored bulbs, or do like I'm doing on my mini tank build of just, I have some colored fiber optic strip that I can just place into the indicator panels and just use that for the colors, and just use all white LEDs. Then I've got, you know, just the interior lights, spotlights on the front. I'll probably put some lights in the guns. I'm not sure if I'm going to keep the original guns or not. I may wind up 3D printing new guns. I need to examine how accurate these are. One thing that I don't recall on the Razor Crest ever having is that the gun's rotating. So I'm probably going to wind up remounting them so that way they're affixed forward. I'm going to make sure that they never rotated, but I don't think they did. I also don't think the Razor Crest ever had a tail gun, because there's occasions where he would have used it if he had. So I'm probably going to take that tail gun out and use that space for batteries or electronics storage. So that gives nice easy access to that. The escape pod location is also potentially useful for that. Although I kind of like the escape pod, I might detail it up more to be usable by like a 3 people or something at, you know, the proper 1/32 scale. That escape pod's actually really big, so I may wind up doing that and coming up with my own interior for the area where you would get to the escape pod. So that'll be a fun project. I think this is where I'm going to call this episode complete. So in the next stages, I will be working up the mounting for the LEDs in the back, and then also some soldering of wires and getting all that fitment secured. So I'll be getting all that taken care of shortly, and I will see you on the next one. Thank you for watching. This has been Dan at Geekery Labs. Wave your geek flag high.